Thank you, Melvin. Presentation up. Yes. Good afternoon, delegates. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the global finance profession, where we are today and where we'd like to see it go in the future. I'm going to initially talk about the current financial ecosystem and some of the things we can do to strengthen it. And then my colleague, Ashvin Vibhakar, will be introduced in a few minutes, is going to talk about the state of trust or distrust in the industry and some things that we think we can do to improve the future. So first, take a look at the financial ecosystem in which we work. And this is just a basic schematic of what the ecosystem looks like. On one hand, you have providers of capital. These are the investors that are looking to save and invest for the future, either companies or individuals. For example, someone who's saving for their retirement and is putting money into their pension plan. On the other side, you have the users of capital. So these are the individuals and the companies that need to borrow money in order to start a business or grow a business. The finance profession performs a very important intermediary function where we match up the providers of capital and the users of capital. We really need, for this the best interest of everyone in this ecosystem, that we have a strong system that's sustainable for the long term. So we want to talk about some things we can do to improve the ecosystem. So I purposely called the finance area the finance profession. I didn't call it the finance business. I didn't call it the finance industry. And so that's very deliberate. And when we talk about a profession, first thing that may come to mind is a professional versus an amateur. So a professional being somebody that's paid to do something versus an amateur that does it for the pure enjoyment. But a profession goes a step beyond that. When you say profession, what do you normally think of? You might think about medicine, you might think about law, you might think about the clergy, perhaps some of you might consider accounting to be a profession. But oftentimes people don't consider finance to be a profession. A profession goes well beyond just being a professional. It's a higher calling, something where you have an interest in looking after the good of society, not just yourself, not just your company. So what does it take to have a profession? It's generally considered to require three things, and we call them the three E's: education, experience, and ethics. Experiences, there's not a lot we can do to influence that. That's something that just comes over time. But the two things that we can focus on to improve the profession and the perception of finance as a profession, and in turn strengthen the financial ecosystem, are education and ethics. And that's actually why CFA Institute was founded originally. So we date back to the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, financial analysis and investments were really a trade or a business. And there were a lot of individuals working in cities like New York and Boston, Chicago, Toronto, that wanted to make something more out of it. So in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, these groups of investors, investment professionals, got together and they formed local societies. And what these local societies did was they contributed to their local communities. They formed standards, they shared experiences, they provided educational opportunities for themselves in order to better educate themselves. We were actually born out of these local societies. They banded together and formed an overarching organization to help set standards globally. And one of the first things they did was an idea came up in the 1940s. You may or may not recognize this individual. This is Benjamin Graham. Benjamin Graham is known by many things. He's the dean of Wall Street. He's known as the father of value investing. He was Warren Buffett's professor at Columbia University. Warren Buffett then went to work for Ben Graham. That's where he got his initial training, education, and experience. And Ben Graham was actually one of the guys that came up with the idea that in order to make this a profession, we need to have some sort of rating system for financial analysts. So he said, the analyst who qualifies for the rating will have the obvious advantage of prestige and proven ability to get a job and the chance for higher pay. In addition, he is likely to develop a more professional attitude towards his work and a keener interest in maintaining and advancing the standards of his calling. And that's what a profession is. A profession is a calling. It's more than just a job. So So the CFA program was born a few years later in the 1960s. The very first exam had 284 people taking the exam. Today, globally, we have over 200,000 registrations for the CFA exam around the world. We have 120,000 members, most of whom are CFAs, and we now have 144 societies in 69 countries, including our newest society here in Peru. Similar story in the Americas. We have over 70,000 members and 70,000 candidate registrations in the Americas. So let's talk a little bit about education and some of the things we've noticed and some of the things that we see coming down the road. First is the basic level of education. And certifications such as the CFA program or another certification are just one aspect. What we're seeing increasingly is the financial markets are getting more and more complex. It's no longer sufficient to have a bachelor's degree. We're seeing an increase in the number of specialized master's programs in finance to help build that stronger education for the financial ecosystem. But a good example of this is the Master of Science in Finance with a specialization in portfolio management offered here in Lima by the Universidad del Pacífico. We're going to see this continuing because of the complexity. We're going to see the need for more specialized education. It goes beyond the initial education, though. This industry requires that we keep up to date. You can't let your education lapse. You have to keep up with the markets. When I took my first investment class, which I won't tell you what year that was, I learned that you needed 20 to 30 stocks to have a diversified portfolio. Today, that's no longer true. With the rise of correlations, not just within asset classes, but between asset classes, today, you need about 50 to 60 securities to have a diversified portfolio. When I was in school, we learned that returns had a normal distribution. We see that's no longer true. We see that extreme events occur about 6 times more often than you would expect given a normal distribution. So it's important that we continue our education in order to keep up with what's going on in the world. And we're seeing that as well here in Peru. So the CFA program really got its start here in Peru a little more than a decade ago. We had a handful of people taking the exam, the CFA program. We've seen basically growth of over 30% in members and candidates here in Peru. So you see the development of the capital markets here, the increase in your GDP. Along with that has been an increase in the number of people interested in continuing their education. And most of these are continuing their education while they're working. Globally, about 70% of the candidates taking the CFA program are employed. In Peru, 91% of our CFA program candidates are already working. So they're doing this along with their day job, continuing their education. So last night we had the inaugural meeting of CFA Society Peru, our newest society. The society, similar to the way we got started, is here to provide local education, local networking, local input into the provision of standards, again, to improve the financial ecosystem. Now let's switch and talk a little bit about the second part, which is ethics. Ashvin's going to talk a little bit about the state of trust and some of the things we can do in the ethics area, but I want to talk about them a little bit as well. In addition to having a good education, you have to make sure that you're putting your client's interest first. And that's something that people forget about in the profession. It's not just a business. It's not about making money for yourself. It's not about making money for your company. It's about serving the ultimate client. In order to do that, we have to have a high level of ethics. We have to put our client's interest before our own. So if we want to really have a strong financial ecosystem, it's important that we continue to focus on a strong ethical foundation and a strong educational foundation. So what are some things you can do as investment professionals? You can put your client's interest first and foremost. You can help improve knowledge, not just the knowledge of yourself, the knowledge of your coworker, and the knowledge of your clients. A better educated client is a better client. You can make sure that you're providing transparent products where you're giving full disclosure about what your clients are buying. Help them focus on risk and not just return, and mentor future investment professionals, current college students and others that are looking to get into this profession. What can your firms do? Obviously, they also need to make sure that the client's interests are being put first. They should make sure that their employees have continuing education, particularly in how to deal with ethical issues. When there are crises, when there's failures, you need to address them responsibly. Have transparent business practices, and if you can, strive for a conflict-free business model. That's rarely possible. When you can't eliminate conflicts, the best thing you can do is disclose those conflicts. So with that, I'd like to encourage you to do your part to help, and Ashvin's going to talk a little bit more about what you can do there.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for that introduction in terms of definition of the profession and from the perspective of CFA Institute, how we can enhance the profession. What I want to talk about is what CFA Institute has observed in the recent time, the issues that have been raised, and the concerns with respect to where the finance profession is been interpreted and observed by individuals in the marketplace and how they think about the financial markets. The way we describe often is that the financial ecosystem that Tom was talking about earlier. We feel that the financial ecosystem, since the financial crisis and the way it's been observed and the way everybody interprets it, is that the system is entirely out of balance. There's not a day that goes by that you don't hear some form of scandals throughout the globe. You've talked about the CDOs, the DDOs, the CDO Square, foreign exchange in the recent time in terms of fixing of the foreign exchanges, the LIBOR, and so forth. So when you hear all this, what are the implications of all of that? Media has done an outstanding job of reporting on all these scandals. It is not unusual for us to find that the regulators have fined the company or some of the state agencies and the judicial system have fined companies in billions of dollars. It's no longer talking about in millions. And as a result, when individual investors read this information, they have completely lost trust and faith in the marketplace. Going back to the earlier slide, there's an entity called Edelman who has done surveys in terms of the trust in the industry, and the last 2 consecutive years, finance industry has ranked at the very bottom in terms of the trust index among the investors. This is a graph that talks as what's called word cloud. This is out of a book called Stewardship by John Taft. John basically asked individuals to say, if you were to describe finance industry in one word, what would you say? And the size of the word here reflects how often that word was repeated by individuals, which means that the investors, the consumers in the marketplace, think of finance industry or finance profession as corrupt, greedy, and these are not really the kind of image that you would want for the industry to be known. We did our own survey of our membership and asked them the question in terms of what they thought about the biggest issues are in the industry. And everyone commented throughout the globe, whether it was in the Europe, Middle East, Africa region, or Asia Pacific region, or America region, the common comment was that the culture at the corporate level needs to be changed. Not only that, it needs to come from the very top. Because ultimately, when you think about it, and there are a number of articles around the social cost of this issue of loss of trust. Effective loss of trust from the investor's perspective is they're scared of the marketplace and they do not invest funds in the marketplace. As Tom talked about the financial ecosystem where the fund flows from the savers to the producers, where the capital is needed, if the investors do not put money in the marketplace, that entire ecosystem does not function anymore, and leading to also reduction in the economic outcome. So you have two aspects of the cost. Individuals do not earn the return that they need in order to achieve their objectives and their goals, retirement, or whatever other goals that may be. And also from the financial and the economic perspective, the economic system starts to slow down and the productivity goes down. So what's absolutely critical is that we put this financial ecosystem back in order. And at the core of that is trust and the integrity of the financial market. As Tom talked about at CFA Institute, our mission statement is to lead the profession globally through ethics, education, and professional excellence. But it should be also for the ultimate benefit of the society. We cannot function in the society in terms of performing the tasks that we do without examining the impact that we create in the society. So our board created the project called Future of Finance. What is the future of finance? The idea is that we want to make sure that we empower every actor in the financial ecosystem to work hard toward creating that market integrity, and making sure that we are providing them tools so that they treat the clients with fairness and integrity, and that trust is regained back in the marketplace. Why do we want to do that? Because we as an organization believe that that is really the true function of the financial system, which is to be a force of good in the marketplace. And lastly, of course, the question becomes, how are you going to do that? Because often we get asked the question, this is really always, task is extremely difficult. And one of the things which one of our Nobel laureate, Dr. Merton, talked about was that if there is an organization who can do that, it's the CFA Institute. And we thought hard about it. And the reason we feel like that we can do this is exactly what you're doing here. People like Melvin, locally, can create impact by collecting all the professionals that he works with in terms of the society. CFA Institute, as Tom explained, we have societies in 69 plus countries. There are 144 plus societies worldwide. And so we have membership all over the world. Our members are passionate about this whole aspect of trust. And as a result, what we can do is provide our membership, provide our societies the tools that are necessary for them to create the necessary debate, to create the aspects of changing behavior. We went around the globe talking to lots of thought leaders, which included Dr. Martin, Dr. Schiller, a couple of Nobel laureates, Jack Bogle, and many of the other individuals who are very passionate about the market and the integrity of the market. And so we talked to over 200 individuals and asked them what they saw issues in the marketplace and what needs to be done. After examination of all that information, we identified that there are 6 areas where we really need to work hard as a profession. And when I say we, I'm talking about every one of you in this room, as well as people such as yourself all over the globe. These 6 themes, I'll talk about a couple of themes. The general principle that we're working with is in each particular theme, we identify what the issues are and trying to create tools that we can provide our membership throughout the globe to use that to create impact. In the area of putting investor first, Tom talked about earlier in terms of the importance of putting client first. Now, how do we go about achieving that? How do we make sure that our membership do that? At the professional level, you can adopt the concept of what we call as our asset manager code. We have created a code of conduct that if the senior level management requires that everyone in the company follows the codes and standards, then by having those ethical codes and standards allows everyone to trust the industry, trust the company. At the investors level, we thought that if investors also understand what their duties are, what their responsibilities are, and what their rights are in terms of what they demand from the providers of financial services, then that can also lead to improved behavior on the part of the industry. This document, Statement of Investor Right, has received tremendous publicity. A number of countries, media have picked it up. and have published this in order to make investors knowledgeable about what those rights are, as well as our membership. We request that they provide to their clients and also to other individuals who are investing in the marketplace, so that they are familiar and knowledgeable about what they should be expecting. There's simple concept: honesty, objectivity, disclosure of conflict of interest, what your fees are charged, in terms of clarity around the fees and so forth. So these are very simple documents. This document is on our website. Anyone can use that, and we highly recommend that you as a firm, if you would like to use it, please go ahead, and even you can put your name at the bottom as a document going from your firm to your clients. Financial knowledge. The important part is that you cannot be a professional, as Tom talked about, without good education and knowledge and information. So to that end, CFA Institute for the Professionals, we have our CFA program, CIPM program in Florida. We're globally known for our global standards in terms of our education and also the inclusion of ethics in our curriculum in terms of all areas. But in addition to that, we also provide a number of conferences and seminars, and we support even local events and provide the individuals who are expert in the field to make sure that the individuals are knowledgeable. In addition to the profession, we also want to make sure that the investors are knowledgeable, and to that end, we also want to make sure that we provide the investor education. So those are two areas. I'm not going to go into the details of different items we have in each particular area in terms of tools, but I want to at least give a couple of points about each topic. Retirement security seems to be an area which is very much concerned on part of many individuals, changing demographics and lack of system which allows people to produce a retirement benefit is non-existent. There is an entity called Mercer out of Australia, which ranks all the countries in terms of their retirement system. And based on that information, for example, the U.S. is rated B- in terms of its rating of the level of retirement system that exists in the U.S. So the critical part is that we need to educate investors in terms of importance of retirement system. We need to educate politicians in terms of importance of retirement system and make sure that the individuals are investing. While this may sound self-serving for the investment industry, it is extremely critical that the retirement system is secure in every country, as we look at in terms of continuous aging population. As life expectancy goes up, the gap from the time individual retires to the time individual death in terms of life expectancy, then those number of years have increased dramatically. And in words of one of the thought leaders, this is a potential future crisis coming up if we don't do something about it. Safeguarding the system, systemic risk is critical. From the perspective of systemic risk, I think it's important that we look at what Basel as well as legislations are doing in countries such as the U.S. as well as India. But I think financial risk and the systemic risk is an issue globally. While many of the countries feel like it's not an issue in their own particular country, financial system is so highly integrated that it's critical that we also examine those risks and make sure that the risks are managed properly. Just to let you know that we have created as what is called as the Systemic Risk Council, which is headed by Sheila Baer, and they're looking into the whole issue of systemic risk from the global perspective. Regulation and enforcement. Often we talk about regulation, not from the perspective of lack of regulation, but more from the perspective of enforcement of the regulations. There are substantial concerns on the part of the public that we are not enforcing regulations. Regulation exists, but the enforcement of the regulation doesn't exist. And part of the reason could be that the regulatory bodies are not given sufficient resources to be able to do their job. So it's critical that they have information. And to that end, I think even we as professionals have to make sure that we work with regulatory bodies so that they are able to enforce the regulations, and we can work with them in terms of formation of proper regulations as well. Transparency and fairness is an area that is age-old. But one of the areas in the recent time where the difficulty has started coming in is the financial innovation. Financial innovation, the products are too complex. People don't understand it in terms of pricing and the risk around the financial product. And the importance of understanding those financial products is important. And this is not only a problem from investors' perspective, it's also an issue from the professional's perspective in terms of when they provide advice, and that advice needs to be objective and understanding of what the risk that exists around the financial innovation products. Lastly, we have an advisory council, and I'm not going to go through all the names there, but you can see from the names of these individuals, there are very recognized thought leaders throughout the globe in terms of who these individuals are. They provide a lot of support for the work that CFA Institute is trying to do in this particular area. These are all passionate individuals with regard to where the finances in terms of how it's leading into the future. And the last point, none of this can happen without all of you. So our perspective is the future of finance really starts with you. Every one of us are professionals, we're responsible, and we need to make sure that we do our part to create a system that has integrity and is a sustainable system in the long run. Thank you.
Audio Jungle.